Hey everybody, and welcome to Theorized Manga, a weekly show in which we talk about Bleach, mainly featuring Bleach, for mainly Bleach viewers. Today, we're going to be going about chapter 580 with me, Akira, and my friend Hunter under the line. So go ahead and we're going to start with the main chapter and recovering everything that happened with it.
Right. So, basic clarification as to what we're going to do. We're going to review. We're going to recap the chapter. We're going to go through page by page. Basically go over what happens. We're going to point out points of interest, and then we're going to go through each little criticism that there may be, the good parts, the bad parts, all of that, and then we should wrap things up with predictions as to what will happen next week. So, furthermore, Bleach 580, The Light, starts off with a image of the guys that were struck by Candace's lightning from last week. Basically, they're all burnt up. They're trying to call out for Kenpachi before some of the other guys that weren't harmed end up running in, trying to catch the guys, see what happens before they fall down, trying to make sure they're not dead. Chances are they're probably going to be dead. Second page brings a full shot of Candace, and at the bottom it confirms Sternritter T, the Thunderbolt Candace Catnip, which confirms the theories as to what her power was. We could have figured that out as early as chapter 544, back when we first were introduced to the character, based off hair, based off the eyebrows. They're all lightning shaped. And basically last week came the confirmation of that through the lightning-based attack we see at the end of the chapter. Following up after that's basically a bunch of 11th Division members calling out them, asking who they are, what are they doing. They need to come down there and fight them, and even if there are girls, they don't care. They're going to try and fight and kill them anyways. Temporary mocking from Gazelle about Candace's power, who then in turn decides to use it again to try to kill the other members. And it's at that point Kenpachi ends up jumping up and slashing at her. And the interesting part here is she doesn't dodge it through the Quincy technique similar to Sunito or Shunpo. She actually turns into lightning. She actually turns into lightning, and it manages to get her directly behind Kenpachi, in which she then hits with the lightning attack. So basically, that means her ability allows her to use lightning as a technique, as an actual weapon, and then it allows her to, I guess, temporarily turn into lightning in order to dodge the attacks that are coming at her. Kenpachi does get hit by this. He's scarred up a bit now, and he's somewhat falling, and then Manias, Sternritter P, shows up, and she hits him with a single punch, and it knocks him straight out of the sky and into a crater. Like, he's out of it at that point. And it goes to somewhat provide input as to what Manias' power may be before it's actually revealed later in the chapter. It's revealed she's the power. I believe the manga Panda translation said powerhouse, but we'll go with the power. Actually, through this chapter, we'll go out through the manga stream translation because there was a considerable amount of some questionable changes with the manga Panda translation. They had changed names. They changed names, specifically that of Manias, Lotado, and Gazelle, which was a bit odd. They didn't change Candace's name, but that's beside the point. So, everybody's reacting to this. Candace makes a comment about, how Kenpachi is able to take all of this. After he's taken all the damage from Grimmy, he's still able to get up and do all of this. But now at this point, Kenpachi's laying down in the crater. He's not moving at all. More reaction from the 11th Division members, who end up getting cut off by Lotado, who is attempting to stop him. She's saying, our opponent is Zaraki Kenpachi. We should expect at least this much. That's why the plan was to kill him in one wave of attacks after he gets worn out a bit. So, 11th Division members react by telling her to get out of the way, etc., all of that. And, she ends up saying, I'm going to be out of the way soon enough. There's no reason for that. And then page 8 brings the shot of her mouth extending, and basically a gigantic mouth just spit out an entire chunk of these Shinigami, which is a bit weird. It's very nightmare fuelish in terms of appearance. Basically, everybody was like, what just happened? Like, what is that? What is going on? Next page, it's just, basically she's like, don't run away. Guys might not be a delicacy, but as far as appetizers go, I've definitely had worse. Then she starts eating the rest of them, killing them, and then she says, I'm so famished, which comes into play and hints into her power, which is then revealed to be she's the glutton, which, from as far as that seems, she has the ability to expand her mouth indefinitely, all of that. And then Kenpachi tries to get up again, tries to stop whatever's going on before he gets zapped again by Candace's lightning. More reaction, more 11th Division members trying to run out and, help when in the distance you see a gigantic floating piece of rubble held up by a single person with one hand. That person's then revealed to be Manias, who actually did that. She is, again, the power, as stated earlier, and it's implied that she has strength of, like, a high amount, like more than Mask, before he gets cheered up by James, and afterwards, back all the way from his fight during the earlier set of chapters during the 560 range. And so basically, she picks up 3 buildings, still intact with the ground. So basically, it's 3 buildings and at least 20 to 30 feet of foundation, still all intact, and she just lifts it with one arm and throws it down on the guys, and they're all crushed. So it reveals her power, then it cuts over to the Gazelle, who's being cut off by a bunch of again, division members, and she's just all, well, don't come running after me. Go run to your captain, try to help him. Don't come to me. Don't try to kill me. That's not going to really do anything. One 11th Division member lines up and prepares to strike, and he strikes, swings downward, hits her diagonally, and she gets hit, blood splatter everywhere, and it's taken a good chunk of her shoulder out. It split her, I guess in a similar manner Hoshwolf split Kane do. And she's just kind of like, well, my blood is gushing out everywhere now, and the guy's just like, you're not dead? You just took that and you're not dead? And another guy goes, my hand, what is this? What is this feeling in my hand? And then Gazelle goes on to say, once you bask in my blood, you have no choice to listen to me. You become my personal corpse. So it then reveals that she is Sternritter Z, the zombie, which mostly theorized, mostly predicted by people. We just never figured out the course of what her power would do. And basically, next page, page 15, she ends up placing her arm back into place. Ends up, like, acting like nothing happened. And as she's doing this, she goes, okay, everyone, seppuku. Manga Panda translation says commit suicide. It's basically the same thing. And the guys end up unable to do anything as their own hands, unwillfully start bringing their swords towards them, and everyone, that was basically after Gazelle ends up killing himself. All 4 of them then go towards Kenpachi, who's still laying in the crater now. He can't move. He's unable to, which relatively makes sense after suffering 2 to 3 lightning strikes plus the punch given by Manias. And then the 4 of them are, just sitting there arguing, like, who's going to get the final blow, who's going to do it, how are we going to decide this, rock, paper, scissors is the only fair way to decide it, all of that, just, a bit of arguing at the end by Manias saying, rock's going to be the one that wins, and then Candace is like, well, you can't go and say that because now everybody's going to use rock. Just basic typical bickering between the 4 that we've seen in the past based off their characters and whatnot. Page 17, the last page, shows the 4, just kind of lined up and whatnot, and there's a skull-shaped explosion in the background, and they're surprised by it, and the caption reads, suddenly a blast shakes the sky, and that's the end of the chapter. So, that's it for 580 for this week, and basically now it's just minor things to note, minor things to review, and whatnot. most of which we kind of already stated during the recap. But the main point of focus right now, I guess, is the explosion at the end of 580. It's it's likely Ichigo. The reason it's likely Ichigo is because we've been expecting Ichigo ever since 555, or it might have been 554, one of those two. And he's been coming for quite a while now. He's been behind time. And the explosion is reminiscent of the shape of the substitute Shinigami badge. You can clearly see the two eyes. You can somewhat see the outline of the teeth, and that's about it. So it can be assumed it's Ichigo. Others are saying it might be Ginjo. It might be the Hueco Mundo gang, everyone that's currently there, such as Grimmjow, or Ime, Chad, all of them. Or it might be, again, Ginjo with the rest of the Fullbringers. There's no really point of telling at this point, of course, until next week, but we'll go ahead and say it might probably be Ichigo that's showing up, implying that these four are going to go against Ichigo, or it could be five. It could be five because the final thing to note is that this chapter had no confirmation as to what happened to Bambietta. We don't know what's happened to her, but it's implied through the Z that maybe Gazelle did turn her into a zombie, and having the zombified Bambietta just lingering about until things get crazy. So then, they need the help. And basically, Bambietta would be the throwaway life out of the four of them. If someone's going to die, it should be her because she's lost and whatnot. Or, maybe Lil Tato just ate her, or one of the four killed her. Either one. So, basically now just the good points and the bad points of this chapter. Go ahead and leave portion up to this Akira before I give my point on it.
So as you previously stated, as we can easily assume at this point, Ichigo's going to return with obviously some form of new power, as if Kubo was just doing the whole shape as a sort of nod to who it would be, then it's clever. If it's some sort of meaning behind possible power, then I highly doubt it, but nevertheless, it's something that was very interesting. And obviously, Bambietta, definitely a point of discussion, having been, could be considered a trump card at this point, due to her abilities as well as everything that she could do, despite the fact that her opponent happened to be immortal at the time. And of course, with Z having been showcased and obviously being able to control high members of the division, which wouldn't tolerate weakness, it's pretty guaranteed that something might have happened involving such. Now, as far as Litoto goes, we can't exactly say that she didn't devour her, as Hunter had stated, so we don't know if that empowers her or if it increases anything about her. She did say that she was still famished despite eating, again, high ranking members, so it could imply that she is perhaps feeding herself to grow or to support other members, because we didn't quite expect the P to be Bananas, because you just don't really expect it from that character, both from design and the acts she took in previous chapters. Candace was fairly plain and obvious otherwise. And as far as little bits in the chapter, there wasn't much of anything that was to be criticized, in personal opinion. There was obviously the points in which how comedic the devouring action seemed to be, due to the odd formation of the teeth that was placed in page 8. Directly in the middle of the top panel looked like cartoon teeth cutting right through a sword at one point, as well as the extension and the fact that her mouth was still intact at that area. But other than that, it was a fairly well built chapter with everything that one could ask for at this point in time. As far as theories are concerned, there more than likely isn't anything to be truly viewed otherwise, aside from what can happen in the next chapter, which, what we can assume again, is that Ichigo will return with some form or another of just him, because he is his own backup at this point, having a dual Zanpakuto being one of three, I believe, to be able to utilize such a technique and otherwise power in of itself.
All right. I as overall as this chapter goes for me, it was decent. It wasn't, perfect. I'd consider the last perfect chapter for me might have been 565. That was the entire backstory we got for Juha. In my personal opinion, that's been one of the best chapters we've gotten in a long time, simply because it was a pure exposition chapter rather than, basic, 5, 6 chapters dedicated towards fighting. It's been the typical, Sternritter reveals their power, kind of gives the idea that, the Shinigami are going to lose, but then someone shows up on the Shinigami side that has, another power that contradicts the other power, and then it's just a constant back and forth. I've got this power, but you've got this power that beats said power, and then it ends up with the Shinigami winning. Um, not much criticism to give. Well, there actually is some. I mean, I wouldn't really consider the way the fodder had been treated to be anything. It's more so hilarious than anything because, you know, it was last chapter Candace goes out and states, well, we managed to get a bunch of them because they all grouped up together. And this chapter, whenever, you know, uh, Tano takes out like a group of division members, and then Gazelle does and Manias does. It's all because they grouped up. Is they were told face to face, you're going to group up and you're going to get everyone killed, and they kept doing that. But that's an expected thing. They're fodder. They don't mean anything. They're just nameless characters that are going to get killed off in the crossfire. But I think most criticism people are going to give is Kimpachi just kind of let this happen. It's understandable in the case of he's hurt. He got, bombed up by a bunch of Grimmy clones, and he got thrown into space. That did a considerable number of damage onto him, and it's understandable as far as that goes. But after that, he just kind of takes it. You'd think at this point he'd end up removing the eye patch whenever he goes to attack Candace, but he doesn't. He leaves the eye patch on, and I don't personally believe it would have helped him that entirely too much. I feel like at this point the damage to him was too much overall for his status, which you kind of unexpect given it's Kenpachi. You think he's going to be the one that tanks everything. He's going to take endless blow after endless blow and still be fine to come out on top. But it doesn't. It doesn't do him any good, and I don't think taking the eye patch off would have done much other than, maybe give him a bit more power that he wasn't really able to use at all. I mean, he went to attack Candace. She was able to turn into lightning. You can't really beat out lightning in terms of speed, so she managed to avoid him. And by the time he recognized it, she had hit him. And by the time he could recognize it again, Manias had hit him. So there's that. It's more so criticism of how going back to the Unohana Kenpachi fight, the purpose of Unohana sacrificing herself was to, one, pass along the title of Kenpachi, because no two Kenpachis may be alive during the same time, and also the fact it was basically to unshackle him. It was supposed to, break all the boundaries for his power, and yet here he is still restricting himself, and it's just, it's kind of like, well, thanks for the fight, Unohana. You kind of gave me my Shikai, but that didn't do me much other than temporarily beat a little kid that ended up killing himself. And I think the final criticism might have to do with where the Ichigo portion of this might go. We're in due for Ichigo to show up. It's been a while since he's been showing up. That's kind of unusual for Bleach. Ichigo's the main character, but he hasn't been around for about nearly 30 chapters. It's past 20, definitely by 575, but he's in due for showing up. But the point is, he's going to show up. He's got the dual Zangetsus now. He's got the Royal Realm training. He's got all of that. He's got his Quincy powers. He's got his Hollow powers. Assumedly, he still does. He hasn't used his mask in a while. None of the Wizards actually use their mask. He's built up and trained. He's got all this power to use. So it's going to be assumed he's going to show up and he's basically going to fodderize these 4 Sternritter, which is a bad thing, considering that's not really what you want to have in a final fight. But again, people have been expecting it. People don't really have a lot of faith in these four characters as terms of strength go, and there hasn't been much to highlight what they're able to do, given they were able to defeat a injured Zaraki that was heavily injured, and pretty much half death, ruptured organs, all of that, and who wasn't using his eye patch. Otherwise, it could be Ichigo showing up to, again, foderize the Sternritter, but when he gets to his next fight, he's going to get beaten, which just kind of like swerves around and makes all the past points of what he's been doing kind of pointless in a sense. And then, again, it's going to be a bit, drawed on at that point if it's going to be Ginja or someone else, because everybody's going to be at the point where it's like, where's Ichigo now? It was basically at the point where everybody was like, where's Kenpachi? We want to see Kenpachi. We've seen Kenpachi now. No, nobody else wants to see Kenpachi, so now people are going, where's Ichigo? We want to see Ichigo. So if he doesn't show up, that's going to be more, Kubo just drawing on about it, waiting, sort of like, the Grimjow reveal. Like, we know it's Grimjow. He knows we know it's Grimjow, but he's pushing it back. And that's basically it. And as far as predictions go, I know Akira said we pretty much expect Ichigo to come in next week. And it should be. It should be. 580 is the final chapter of Volume 64. We'll find a release date and whatnot, cover art for that, all of them soon, probably within a few months, because 500, 500. Well, yeah, 570, pretty much through that. 569, chapters 569 to where we are now, would be releasing in Volume 64, and Volume 63 just came out. So this chapter would be the end chapter for Volume 64, which means a cliffhanger was pretty much guaranteed. So it's hyping up something that's going to happen. You can assume that's Ichigo. And Bleach next week will actually have a colored page. So if it's a colored page of the four Sternritter girls, we don't know, or if it's going to be a colored page of Ichigo showing up, it basically confirms that something big's probably going to happen. Unless, it's another filler color page similar to the one where Grimmy got a color page that it wasn't really there for any other reason other than to hype his character up during the middle of his fight with Kenpachi. So that's pretty much it on prediction. There's not much we can go off going on beyond saying that Ichigo's going to show up. He might start fighting the Forest Sternritter, saving Kenpachi in a similar manner as Kenpachi had saved Ichigo during his fight with Noritora and Tessera. And there's not much beyond that, to be honest. We'll just guess we get what we get. Again, the overall chapter was pretty excuse me, I can't talk at the moment. Satisfactory. It was good. Wasn't like, perfect, beyond great. Best chapter ever to happen in Bleach, but it was pretty good in its own right.
So as he was saying, obviously, the next chapter can't be predicted that well. We get what we get, and hopefully something will happen. Of course, the color page, as you mentioned, hopefully will mean something important and not a simple state of being, like previously mentioned, Grammy just being filled in and colored for the single momentary purpose of being colored. But aside from that, thank you for watching and for getting involved. And hopefully, if all goes well, we'll see you next time when we can finally finish up this volume, as we did today, with the next one. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.